All
Because
right.
sometimes we will record a like a little skit or something on the opens.
Yeah,
We
we
don't
usually
do
do
it
a
all the
back and
time.
forth kind of call and response
Yeah.
situation where
Okay.
we I'll say something, he'll say something, I'll say something, he'll say something, I'll say something, and then, we'll go, let's talk about it on this episode of Just Draws, and then we go into the opening starts.
Intro.
You guys feed off each other very well.
Yeah,
We've
I
been friends
guess.
for a little while, so yeah. So I would guess so too. Yeah. What's up, everybody? You've tuned in to Just Draws, the podcast that explores hot topics and various experiences among same-gender loving Black men. In each episode, we offer raw, vulnerable, and stripped-down perspectives to give voice to our frequently overlooked population. Here, we don't just scratch the surface, we dive deep, peeling back the layers of our experiences as well as heteronormative stereotypes. Let's get into this week's episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Just Drawz podcast. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Darius, aka DMC.
All right, and tonight we are coming from Bill's Candy Shop. Okay, so that's the candy shop where that was in Willy Wonka, where Charlie got his candy bar.
That was the name of it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you would pay attention to some
flown right
details
past
like
me.
that. Yeah, me too. It did fly right past me. So, okay.
Truth be
Great,
told,
we're
I
at
did have to
Bill's.
look that up.
Nerd.
All right. Yes. All right. So today we've got another special episode. We've got a guest. I'm going to toss things off to Darius today and let him pick up. So what do we have this week?
All right. Y'all get ready for this. We're going to have a real good conversation about something that is pretty serious within society and our community. So one of the topics that we've discussed within our production meetings was the notion of depression, like not only within society, but specifically within the LGBTQ plus community. So while we really wanted to talk about our own experiences with it, like we felt like we needed a professional here to help us navigate through this conversation. So with that, we have our special guest, as you can see on the screen now, Mr. DeMarco Majors. We want to thank you for coming and joining us on Just Drawz.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Welcome.
Absolutely. We appreciate
Thanks
you.
for
So,
coming.
yeah, why don't you tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, everyone, my name is DeMarco Majors, from a small town in the Midwest in Indiana. I'm an ex-professional basketball player turned model, actor, producer. But most recently, I created my own strategic life coaching practice. I seen what the mental health looked like with professional athletes, and it made me want to dive deeper into helping them and plus helping my community. So I mainly deal with um, athletes in LGBTQI community, especially Black and Brown community, because we need representations to have people that look like us to help us with our struggles.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. So as you can see, again, professional is what we're doing here at Just Drawz tonight. All right. So we're going to get in. We're going to have some conversation. We're going to ask some questions. And definitely after this podcast is over and we post this episode, we want to continue the conversation. So we want you all to comment and ask questions because we'll all still be linked to this. But tonight, again, we're going to get into some things. And so DeMarco's already told me that some of the questions that I sent him earlier, he's ready for. He said he felt a little bit intimidated by, but I told him to just, relax. He's going to be all good. I'm sure he's going to give us some great nuggets and all of that good stuff. So with that, the first question that I'd like to ask you is, since we're talking about depression in general, what is depression?
Well, depression has so many different layers to it. Depression is the elevation or lowering of your mood, and sometimes it also it inhibits your daily life. There's things that
Okay.
that you want to do that you seem that you can't do, things that you usually love doing, but you can't seem to get
Hmm.
yourself to do. Not to mention, just remember that everything in the brain is chemical. Nothing is
Right.
visual until you attach an emotion to it. And some of us don't
Hmm.
realize that some of the memories that we have not only hold the five senses to it, but it also has a time place stamp on it that holds our attachment to it. So depression also have an
Hmm.
attachment to it that holds us in a place mentally.
Okay. Okay.
So, I quick question on that. So, what would be the difference between depression and just feeling bad, having a bad day or
Hmm.
a bad couple of days back to
Right.
back or something?
Well, the difference is that when you have a bad day, remember there's 24 hours in a day. So there's really no such thing as having a bad day if you total out everything that's going on. So usually when you're having a bad moment, you can snap yourself out and say, hey, you know what? Okay, this happened. Cool. Let it go. However, with depression, you have an attachment to it. You're held captive by it. You become a prisoner to it. You become a prisoner in your own mind. And then
Okay.
you start creating scenarios in your mind how to deal with it, but you actually never come out of your mind. So depression can be acute or chronic, and it can also come from birth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard that depression can come from like you can almost be born with it, right? Is that
Absolutely. Well, think
that's
about it.
interesting? Okay.
Think about a young mother who is going through
Hmm.
a pregnancy. She remember stress hormone cortisol is produced
Got
in
it.
the brain when stress comes on, and it produces over
Hmm.
body tissue. That's a hormone. Then you have remember I
Right.
said before that you have the chemical reactions that in the brain. So you have a thought or a feeling, that feeling of anger,
Hmm.
sadness, fear. That's a chemical reaction. So that combined feeds through the umbilical cord through the child to the child. So
Right.
that
Right.
child is experiencing the emotional turmoil that you may be going through and all that fear. So you can be born with chronic depression.
Okay. Yeah. And that's that once you
Wow.
started talking, I was like, okay, I already see where this is going. Yeah,
Yeah,
the idea that the mother is passing that through, definitely through that life, you know,
Yeah,
of the
just like
umbilical
I
cord.
guess.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
And
What were you saying,
even
Jeff?
we have, I don't like to call them curses. I don't like to call them
Okay.
curses. We have
Right.
generational patterns that are attached to it. Not
Okay. Hmm.
necessarily, not it's called epigenetics. It's not necessarily changing the framework of your DNA. It's the chemical
Hmm.
response, chemical reaction to what the brain outputs that combines with it. That's why sometimes we can get, you know, we can be triggered into a generational pattern. And we think that, sometimes we think that it's our own. It's kind of like being a sponge, being an empath. You can be in a room and feel the energy of different people and be affected
Yeah.
by it. And you think that your mood is lowered when you're actually just being absorbing. So that can also cause, depression. That's why being around people who are low vibrational versus you can have high functioning depression, low grade depression. You have all these different rooms that you could be in with depression, and excuse me. To me, it's actually fascinating. Um,
Hmm.
I was one who had chronic depression as a child and adult. I still deal with it and um, have my moments. And I've had to learn how to allow depression to have its experience, allow emotions to have its experience to flow through me and not stop it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Got you.
that's really interesting because it's similar to I guess drugs and alcohol
Hmm.
use. If a
Hmm.
pregnant mother is, she's abusing substances, that can
That gets
transfer
passed.
to the
Hmm.
child as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a big fear. That's one of the issues in the LGBTQI community that a lot of people have gotten into substance abuse because they don't know how to deal with the depression. They don't know the
Hmm.
signs, they don't know the signals. They just know that they're not feeling like themselves. And sometimes we make decisions from a chemical imbalance. That's why working
Mm-hmm.
out is a great form of balancing the mind. One of the things that I love is I teach people how to do tapping. I don't know. Have you ever heard of tapping?
Mm-mm. What's that?
Tapping
I have
basically
not.
is it's a new it's a new form of it's a way to get the mind to be recentered. So you tap here and you say affirmations here on your occipital lobe, tapping to these different places. Once you hit that nerve ending, you're tapping on it, and then you say affirmations. That helps you recenter your brain, stops the production of cortisol, so that you're not in the stress hormone anymore, and then you can go about your day much faster.
Okay, that's dope. I
Yeah, that's
definitely
pretty
think I
cool.
might want to try that.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that for sure.
Hmm.
It's definitely one of the
You
things that
talked about.
I,
Oh, yeah.
when I was doing my studying about it, that's what I was doing. That's what
Hmm.
helps me a lot.
Okay, dope. You talked about the differences between chronic depression and acute depression. So, for people who are or maybe suffering with acute depression, what are some of the early signs that they could recognize that they're going into this depressive state?
Great question. Avoidance. Avoidance is
Okay.
very big. We stop wanting to go. You know how people say, um, because of my zodiac sign, when I go through this, I don't like to be around people. I don't want to do this. No,
Mm-hmm.
you actually
Mm-hmm.
have acute depression. You're probably high functioning depressed, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not avoiding an intense situation. You're avoiding people because there are certain things that you're not able to express yet. And then there's not.
Okay.
Then there's on the flip side of that, there's there's the task that you normally do. Like, say for instance, you wake up on Monday ready for work, you shower. Tuesday you don't. Wednesday you don't. Thursday you start smelling yourself. You just sprinkle a little water on yourself. It's like those daily tasks you stop doing in the way of taking care of yourself and the way of self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So those are a
Mm-hmm.
couple ways that you could see early stages of depression coming on. And
Mm-hmm.
it's learning how to get out of that space is a major issue, especially when it comes to our community, is we definitely have to learn what those signs are, because those signs start early in our childhood.
Okay. Okay.
So it's interesting that you say that because in a previous episode, I did a solo episode where I talked about I was going through this funk earlier in the year,
Mm-hmm.
and we were at a good clip with doing the podcast. You know, we were recording. I was doing all the production and uploading everything, and we had like this is right at the start of this season. Actually, it was earlier this year. I said that before, but yeah. So anyway, I just was going through this feel bad for a couple of days thing, like I just asked at the start of the show, because I was just doing just enough to get by. I was just
Right.
doing just enough work, you know, hanging out, socializing just enough, and then hey, everyone's at my house, great,
Yeah.
and people would leave, and then I'd just be like, whew, all right, I'm gonna go to bed now.
Right. Right.
So I had a couple of those days, and working from home, you know, I didn't have to get up and go and see people. You know, so I had my couple of days. It was a little funky. I have Walmart Plus and Amazon Prime, so I didn't have to leave the house to order anything.
You weren't
So
taking
you
hoe
know,
baths?
I wasn't even doing that. Like I was just, it was real raw up in here, and you know, I would do that until I'd actually have to go out and, you know, be amongst people. But,
Right.
you
Right.
know, one day I just like snapped out of it, and then, you know, I was just fine. You know, I started doing better at work, you know, doing more than just the minimum. Started going back to the gym and trying to take care of myself, you know, cooking my food and all that stuff. So I had an experience with that, but I don't feel like I was depressed, but I knew that something wasn't just right. at the time, and it just kind of vanished as quickly as it came. And I never was able to put this was the reason why this was, you know.
You had a low grade depression. Um,
Okay.
Remember, depression doesn't have a timeline. There's not a specific amount of time that you have it. You know, once you get into the space where you're not fully functioning at the level that you normally function, you slip into this area where, just like you said, you know, I wasn't doing this and I wasn't doing that, and I was, you know, and then I stepped out of it. What tends to happen when you're in that state? Again, we talked about, you know, the hormone cortisol. Do you know that cortisol, once it produces, until it's stopped, it shoots out every 15 minutes. So you get that intense feeling. And what the body does, the body gets addicted to that hormone, and then you go into dopamine. So the time that you came out of it, your body was probably calling for that dopamine. So you went to the gym, you needed your endorphins, you needed something to make you high to pull you out of that state.
Okay.
It's tricky. Depression is a very tricky and touchy subject because there's so many ways and avenues to get into that space, but not many ways to get out of it. Especially when especially when you're a creative. You know, when you're a creative,
Yeah.
you know, your mind is always going. You're always trying to create something. You're always trying to think of the right thing to say, the best thing to do. You know, when you have to snap out of it, you may feel like you snapped out of it. You're like, oh, let me shower, let me, you know, present myself so nobody know what's really going on. So there's a deeper story within you that pulls you to it. And so you're probably still in that pattern. It's just a low grade depression. So you're able to function, do the things that you normally do. It's still probably lingering until you stop that production of cortisol.
Okay. Interesting. So I've got some homework, I guess, once we're done tonight.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you were just kind of talking about that and just saying that, yeah, I was just in a funk and I just didn't feel as if I wanted to do anything. And so I think that
Hmm.
some of those words that we tend to use within the community, especially within the
Absolutely.
Black community, things like I was in a funk,
Hmm.
or I'm just not feeling myself, or I'm under the weather, or I feel blah, you know, those sorts of words and those
Hmm.
sorts of phrases that we tell ourselves in order to try to
Hmm.
get through stuff. We're really experiencing potential low grade depression, which is very
Absolutely.
interesting. And I know that when I get
You know,
into spaces like that, I experience I want to sleep. That's the thing that I want to do whenever I'm
mm,
in that funk, blah, under the weather sort of thing. That's the thing I want to do. I just want to sleep. I want to sleep it off. I want to sleep it off. And I know that, you know, I know self-diagnosis is misdiagnosis, but there are
Right.
times where I go, okay, I feel like I might be in a mild depressive sort of state. So let me kind of figure out how I need to get myself out of that.
you know, one of the tools that I like this is just for me, you know, anybody can use it.
Hmm.
Um, I like to tally up the day. And what I mean by that, there's 24 hours in a day,
Hmm.
60 minutes, you know, in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. If you really look at all the bad things that have ever happened in your life and total it up in time, not you thinking about it, but things that actually happened to you. Out of 47 years of life, I may have had 24 hours of bad things. So I may have had 3 to 6 months of bad in my life out of 47 years. So that tells me I'm living a damn good life. It's not as grim
Hmm.
and dark as I may perceive it to be. But depression, I'm going to let you have your moment. I'm giving you a couple days to let you have your experience, but I've got to get back to me. Sometimes you have to, and you have to name it sometimes. And not to mention, there is a vocabulary that we learn when we're in these different places. So sometimes we have to heal our vocabulary because sometimes we have conversations with ourselves and we talk to ourselves and we talk about ourselves and we use words that we commonly use that have a frequency on it. that affects us when we just remember when we just have a memory. That memory causes that chemical reaction that will take us back because the ego will do anything that it possibly can in order to live. So it wants to survive. So it's going to grab every memory that it can to get that chemical component because it wants to live off that addiction.
Okay. Got you. Got you. Okay. Learning a lot of stuff here tonight, people, and we're
Right.
just really getting started. Okay. So, one of the things that I found in my research of this topic and preparing for this great professional that we have here tonight is this concept of minority stress. And
Mhm.
minority stress is this theory that really kind of involves the psychological stress that people really experience being members of stigmatized, ostracized, or lambasted groups of people, you know, and it's based also in the idea that stigma, prejudice, and discrimination can really lead to some of these negative outcomes, and some of those negative outcomes really include mental and physical disorders. So being a part of the LGBTQ plus community and it being one of those minoritized and stigmatized groups, how do you feel that minority stress can affect the mental health of LGBTQ plus individuals?
I'm sorry, I paused. Would you mind repeating that? There was a
Yeah,
glitch.
I said with the LGBTQ plus community being a minoritized or stigmatized group, how do you feel that minority stress can affect the mental health of LGBTQ plus individuals?
Greatly. It affects us. It affects our identity. It affects
Hmm.
how we move through life. You know, when I was 5 years old, with a single mother, my mom had to teach me about me being black, a black kid in my classes in Indiana.
Hmm.
Baby, you have to talk a certain way. You have to be a certain way because the kids in your school, the teachers will do this to you. You can't react. You can't cry. Don't do this. When we were little boys, you do something. Your mama tell you, stop crying before I give you something to cry for. So you slowly
Right,
you
right.
stop being sensitive to things and you grow this skin, what they say thick skin, but you're covered in this way of stifling yourself. So then you present
Hmm.
yourself to the world, and then you say, "Hey, I'm a part of this community." Now you're another minority within a marginalized group. So it really stunts our identity, it stunts our growth, it stunts the way that we become 25%, 15 to 25% of who we actually truly are as a human being. We don't actually get to express ourselves fully unless we feel that we are safe and we don't know what safety really is. You know, many of us who grew
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
in, I don't like saying broken homes, but that's what grew up in single parent
Yeah,
homes.
that's what it
So
is.
your mother had
Yeah.
to be,
Hmm.
yeah, your mom had to be mother and father. So she had to take on masculine, feminine roles within you, and you're watching her be this person, and she's the person of strength that but she doesn't know how to deal with her emotions. So you start to develop this type of savior complex. You feel like you got to save mom, be this for the family, but I'm gay or I'm, bisexual, I'm lesbian, I'm trans, but I don't know how to express that. So you start to shrink. So it greatly affects us and it affects our identity, before we can truly learn how to accept who we are.
Hmm.
You mentioned like it stunts growth, and a lot of us men, are told men don't cry. You have to
Absolutely.
hold all of
Yeah.
all
Man up.
your emotions in, man up, exactly. And then
Hmm.
once you get to a point where you can no longer hold that, it explodes out, and usually it's very violent.
It's
Hmm.
violent. Yeah. Hmm.
Because yeah, because then you're at the point where, oh, I'm crying now, I'm embarrassed because I'm expressing myself in this way, and I'm supposed to be a man, I'm not supposed to have these
Right.
tears running down and snot running out my nose. I'm supposed to be the tough person, and people, have a hard time dealing with that. And then a lot of times, we'll see on social media, at least, um, white white males are given grace, a little bit more grace, I feel, when you see them crying and things like that. No one really, makes fun of them or anything like that. But if we see a grown man crying, like the Michael Jordan, crying
Yeah.
meme,
Yeah.
that ends up being something that, like, yeah, what's he crying for? What's you crying about? What, you're a man. You're not supposed to be crying. You're supposed to be tough. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that we're not given that space and allowed to grow. I think we would be better men if we were able to express ourselves and not feel like, oh, we're going to be made fun of because of that.
Well, look at the journey of that. That journey is actually a generational pattern that's passed down from slavery on down, not just because we're men, but the men in our
Hmm.
families, when they had the women and being in front of the slave master, you couldn't show that you were crying when you're being beat or you're being hurt because you had to, because they would take more advantage of your family if you showed that type of weakness. Then you take that aggression out on your family, and how that aggression come out? Well, that aggression, there's a depression there, but that aggression comes out sexually. Now you have
Right.
these different chemicals into the semen that are going into the woman that is creating a baby that that's, that's mixing with the DNA. You have all these things, these chain links going all the way down. I don't know what think about some of the things that your mother would say to you when you was a little kid. Like my mom would say things to me like, you know, like I was said before, shut up before I give you something to cry for.
Right.
I'm already crying. You just beat me. Now you're telling me to
Hmm.
be quiet. I
To
can't.
shut up.
Then
Yeah.
you told me to ask. You asked me a question. I'm trying to answer the question because if I don't answer the question, I'm
And you
going to
tell me to
get
shut
beat
up.
more. So now when I'm
Hmm.
around other people and somebody says something to me, I have all this frustration built up. Either I'm going to be quiet or I'm going to be a quiet assassin. Like I'm going to
Hmm.
cut deep because I don't know how to control and I'm more afraid. Some of us are more afraid of our reaction response to people, which is why some of us are very quiet. That's why I used to tell some of my straight friends, be careful messing around talking shit about that feminine boy over there because he had to fight his whole life. You don't know what demons and
Hmm.
battles he's had to fight and what's happened to him. So you might go over there and say something, you might come back limping and hurt. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Right.
it's very true for a lot of us. I know as an athlete, you know, I remember this one kid. Um, we were playing basketball in high school, and I was a quiet kid. I was on the basketball team, but I was quiet. Getting up, playing time, and he said something, and it triggered a memory from what my mom did to me. And I looked at him, and I said, "I'll kill you," and it's never had come out of my mouth. And he looked at me,
Hmm.
and he stepped to me, and I picked him up by his throat. I had never had an outward, you know, I'd never been outwardly expressive like that. I felt so bad that I had done something wrong, thinking that my mom was going to whoop me because of things that this kid triggered, and I didn't know that I was being triggered. And that's also another thing that happens to. We have trauma attached to words that are triggers.
Hmm. Yeah. Very true. I'm glad that you mentioned the idea of things being passed down from our ancestors, from slavery to, all that we have gone through as a people. And it's ingrained in our cellular membrane, some of this stuff. And sometimes we don't understand that that stuff can be passed down or that stuff is passed down through lineage and through ancestry. So some of the ways in which we function are ways that we've had to function or our ancestors have had to function in the past. So I'm really glad you brought that up because that's something that we don't talk enough about, and we don't think about
Absolutely.
that in terms of how we function in today's society, even though we're not technically in the same type of slavery. We're in a different form,
Hmm.
but we're not in the same types of
Yeah.
slavery that our ancestors had to go through, but all of that pain and that trauma does get passed down.
Absolutely. It can be scary. Um, Sometimes you get information. Sometimes have you ever had the experience where somebody's saying something to you and you look at them and you start telling them about their whole life and you didn't even know the person. You just had these feelings and you just started speaking out to them and telling them what's going on with them and that's that information. That's that download, and because it has two sides of the coin. And sometimes we have to be mindful. That's the better word I want to use. Be mindful and consider that a lot of the things that you may be going through are probably ancestral because it's not who you are, it's not who you truly are. Many of us as young Black men navigating young Black men that happen to be queer, that happen to be gay, we have to carry ourselves almost like we're perfect. Like a white boy can walk around and just fart. And we have to hold it in because we were told that that's nasty. As little boys, when we did the pee-pee dance, our mom would come up to us, hit you on the hand, stop doing that, that's nasty. Now you have an unhealthy attachment to your genitals. And what's the first thing when you have an unhealthy attachment to something like that? You become hypersexual once you become into the community. So there's all these different layers that influence us when it comes to depression and where some of these traumatic episodes begin.
Wow.
Starts to make you think, right?
Yeah. That's the thing. Like that's why there's awkward pauses there, because it's like, okay, wow, we never really thought about the levels to this shit, as people say. That there are so many levels and there's so many layers to that. In your work as a life coach, do you feel that there's a different approach to treatment for LGBTQ plus individuals that are dealing with these sorts of depressions and mental health issues?
There's different approaches because our straight counterparts don't have to they deal with body dysmorphia. They deal with some of these things that we deal with, but sometimes they don't deal with it as deeply as we are because they are allowed to express themselves in certain ways. And we are held back and held captive because, had we shared this, thing that's in us that we felt, like if you went to church as a kid, the pastor said, you know, these homosexuals, if you homosexual, if you like boys and if you like girls, you gonna go to hell and you gonna burn in the lake of hell and fire. That's gonna restrict you. And that causes me as a coach to have to dig deeper into your psyche because not only do you have an emotion attached to the memory, you have your five senses attached to that. What it smelled like, what it felt like, what did you touch? What did you see? What did you truly hear? How did you interpret the information? So there's a lot that goes into the healing of an LGBTQI person that may be a little different than our counterparts.
True.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that because, a lot of us, Black gay men, we've grown up in the church or have been to church very often. And, I remember hearing that same, sermon at least once a year or every 18 months, it would come up. And, you're sitting in there knowing that you have certain feelings and you have this person telling you that, oh, you're going to burn in hell and you're impressionable, teenager or preteen or something like that. And that just kind of hits you, and it's hard to get people to get over that hump. And,
Absolutely.
If they're super religious and they've really, really, really been in church and they never had the freedom to experience not going to church or getting to the point where they can question their religion and actually look into other things other religion than just life and spiritualism objectively. They kind of get stuck, there where,
Yeah.
hey, I think I'm going to, that those feelings, the negative feelings, I'm sorry, they're stuck in that, and it's hard to let that go.
Well, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is that once you hear that, you attach your identity to it. You attach your identity to the pain. So you over exaggerate in another form. Why do you think so many of us were in the choir, leading songs? Because that was the only way that we could truly express ourselves, express that hurt, and to get the validation that needed to, we wanted to seek so bad. And it allowed us to actually feel, because before we were so numb, we had to numb ourselves to say, that's not me. I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to be like this, because mama and grandma, especially if grandma loves this pastor,
Yes, indeed.
grandma's gonna look at her baby because she knows her baby is different. And she's gonna do
Mhm.
whatever she possibly can to make sure her baby gets the love without saying, I know he's different, or I know that he's gay. So she's going to love on that child a different way. The actual mother of the child doesn't know how to handle the child, so she forces the child to do other activities. The father, if the father's in the picture, the father will make you play sports, do this and do that. I feel fortunate enough in my life where my dad was one of the top basketball players in Indiana when he was in high school. Everybody knew him. Then he got into a car wreck and he, became a paraplegic. I had never seen my dad walk. So my whole life he was in a wheelchair. They never pushed me into sports. They never, to be honest with you, they never even came to see a basketball game that I had ever played. And I played on
Wow.
every level.
Wow.
That hurt me in such a way that it gave me this strong desire to not want to see other people hurt like I hurt. And so when we lean that way, because religion also did that to me. So when we start leaning that way, we come into the community trying to be fixers and trying to have a savior complex. We end up in relationships that we have no business being in. We try to save people that we are not assigned by God to save, instead of saving ourselves first. So that's how we slip into these high functioning, low grade depressions that truly hurt our identity. And so that's why when we start to try to learn how to come out of this space, people try to reason first without accepting first. Acceptance comes before anything. When you can
Hmm.
say, I accept all that is in me, all that is me, as I am becoming more of me, now you've allowed yourself to go, okay, there was a reason why I was participating in life this way. There's a reason why I couldn't love, or I was angry at mama because certain things were said, because you didn't hear with your ears, you heard with your triggers.
Mhm. I have a couple of, you brought up the point about your parents not coming to see any of your games. Have you ever interrogated that with them, or talked to them about why they never came?
I talked to my mom. My father passed away. Um,
Okay.
my father passed away when I was on my way to play pro ball in Argentina.
Okay.
Not on my way to Argentina. I had come back into the States, and I got a call from my mom. And so I flew
Mm-hmm.
to Indiana and I sat on his bedside and I told him everything. Because
Okay.
I literally, I left church, came out, went and played pro ball, first openly gay dude to be in that situation who talked about it, all in the same like 8 months. So my life drastically
Wow.
changed. It was crazy. So when I sat down with my mom, I asked her, um, you know, why did you never come and see me play? Like I, I was sitting on the bench and I would look up in the stands just to see, if somebody
Mm-hmm.
that loved me enough. That's how I equated love.
Right. Right.
And my mom told me, she said, it's not that I didn't want to be there for you. I had your two sisters, and I was going through my own things. And one of the things I had to learn how to do is I had to humanize my mom in that moment. I said, wait a minute. My mom was a young mother who had three kids. She gave me away to my grandfather when I was 13 on Christmas Day. Not that she wanted to do it, but because that's what the circumstances were. So she was hurting in so many different ways, plus an abusive relationship with my sister's father. So there were so many different levels. And I was like, wait a minute. I know how crazy my 20s were. You had three kids in your 20s
Right.
and you're trying to hold down a household. Now I get it. So not that you still couldn't have managed to come, but I don't penalize you
Mm-hmm.
anymore for not
Right.
being there. And it probably worked out better for me because, if my mama showed up, I'm gonna get in the game and show out. I don't care who. If you don't
Yeah.
pass me the ball, I'm going off.
Right. Exactly.
but um,
Exactly.
but I get to share memories with my mom because my mom's a completely different person now. She's more available in her
Yeah.
heart and in conversation. So I get to tell her,
Mm-hmm.
Mama, I was in Argentina, I was in Brazil, I was in Fiji, I was playing ball. I was talking about faith, hope, and life during halftime shows, still talking about what y'all instilled in me. And she gets to hear these
Mm-hmm.
stories and live vicariously through me. So it's kind of an expression of, I think God set it up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree completely with that. I've had a similar situation with my biological father, kind of being estranged from him for a long time. And then finally in my 20s, being able to say, listen, I am not looking for you to raise me at this point, but I feel like in order for me to move on and for me to be able to journey to whatever the next chapter is in my life, I need to know what happened. I need to know why you weren't present, why you weren't around. And it was probably one of the most freeing things that I've ever done because he and
Mhm.
I had a conversation about it. He was like you said, your mom is, he was in a completely different space and he was able to actually own the fact that he wasn't around and actually be able to give me his side of what happened, whereas I was only given one side prior to that, or I only could see things one way. And
Mhm.
so when he explained things to me, it was like, wow, okay, I complete everything that you said makes absolute sense to me. And I can see it happening exactly the way that it planned out. And while I can still say that, yes, I wish that you had been around for some things, or I wish that I had seen you more when I was younger, I can say now that I appreciate the fact that, again, you owned who you were at that time and you're able to share with me that, who you've become at this point. So I
Right.
completely understand where you're coming from with that, and have been there before. So I get it.
And I appreciate
Yeah, I
that
think it's
story.
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's important to remember because I think we don't see that as children growing up that our parents are not the same people that they were when we saw them as kids. Like
Yeah.
once you kind of get to adulthood and you can see, oh, that's my mom at this stage in her life. And then you
Mhm.
start thinking about, well, hey, I got some miles on myself. And I'm like, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, not the same
Hmm.
person I was 10 years ago. So your parents are having those same experiences as well.
Mhm.
So, you put that criticism or you reflection back on them, then you have to give them the same grace to say that, oh,
Yeah.
well, that person, my parent, is not the same as what I knew growing up. So yeah, they may treat my nieces and nephews or their grandkids a little bit different
Right.
than they did me, but they're not in that same space. They don't have that same stress, hopefully, that they did when we were younger, when they were younger, when I was younger. So, yeah, I think it's important to remember that your parents are still growing if they're still here and, evolving themselves. And, they're people, they're human. They're experiencing life and they're experiencing emotions and things, and you know, they're as you said, human, like
Yeah.
you humanized your mom before. I think it's very important that people don't lose that focus.
Absolutely. I recently went back to my hometown, and in September, it was my birthday and my mom's wedding. Um, Watching my mom be free in her love for the first time in her life, because I sat down and I talked to her, and she was like, "My mom used to tell me, I'm not getting married. My mom has 11 brothers and sisters. Well, technically she has 11 brothers and sisters, but then my grandfather remarried and had the other woman had five other kids, so she's like one of 17. Um,
Wow.
all of my granddad's kids, he watched get married, and everybody was on my mom, and nobody really liked to talk to my mom back then because her mouth was reckless, crazy. You say one thing to her, you could say the. If the came out wrong, it was on from there, and it could be, if anything's in the way, you better make sure that ain't nothing within her reach of this because you're gonna get popped with it. Um,
Hmm.
but sitting down and looking at this woman, um, the love that she has for herself now, the respect, the love, the art of all the things that she released and let go. I hate to say it like this, but she had a partner before, and he died during COVID. Um,
Oh wow.
that traumatized her, and her and I started talking every day for 3, 4, 5 hours a day, you know, for like a month and a half, just to make sure that she was okay. And we had never had that type of relationship. Our relationship was once every 2, 3 months, we talk for 3 hours, and then I holler at you later. She's still my best friend, but because I can talk, I tell her anything. But to see her gush with love and intimacy,
Hmm.
and to see this man come into her life. You know, he actually came into the house one night, the night before the wedding, and he wasn't supposed to be there. She's like, "You couldn't stay away from me, could you?" And he started laughing. The way he looked at my mom in that moment sold me. My mom
Okay.
has found true love. And God gave it to her when she could actually accept it, because she finally accepted herself, because she's no longer. My mom lived in a depressed state. Not that it stopped her, but it stopped her from loving who she truly could be and loving other people. And to see that man look at her that way, I said, that's how love shows up. And me and my mom had a conversation, because I looked at her and I said, Mama, you do realize that I was there when you turned 21 and you became legal. I was there when you turned 24 and nobody could claim you on their taxes. I was there at your dirty 30. I was there when you turned 40. I was there when you turned 50. I've been there all your milestones. And I've
Hmm.
watched you grow as a woman, not just my mother, but as a woman, my friend, my mom. Sometimes if I need parenting, you know, I've been raising myself since I was about 5 years old, and had to help raise my siblings. We all know what that's like, but to watch her go through that, and again, that's one of the main reasons, besides, watching athletes and their mental health, one of the main reasons why I wanted to become the man. I became the man that little DeMarco needed as a child. So now I get to have these conversations with my mom of what I seen us go through and what it looked like as a child and how I interpret that as an adult.
Hmm. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that story too, and thank you for triggering some of those memories, specifically for me, and I'm sure for Jeff as well. Uh, what are some good practices or maybe some coping mechanisms for helping LGBTQ plus individuals navigate this thing called balance? We hear balance a
Mm,
lot. we hear work-life balance, you hear, all of this different thing, protecting my peace kind of thing. And so with us being human, we deal with things like uh the minority stress of our race, of our sexuality. We talked about religion a little bit. And spoiler alert for our viewers and our listeners, we're probably going to have an episode, probably in season 3, where we talk about religion in the LGBTQ plus community. So stay tuned for that. And also, even things like death, when we're dealing with the death of
Mm.
loved ones or loss of relationships, loss of friendships, loss of all these different things. So what are some good practices and some coping mechanisms for helping people in our community navigate those sorts of balances?
One of the first things I would say is when you come into the community, find mentors that look like you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Not that want to sexualize you, not that just want to give you money and heal a moment. Find you some mentors, find you a mentor that is willing to help you navigate through this community, that will tell you some of the best practices, that won't judge you if you're on a dating app, different things like that. 2, journal. Journal
Mm-hmm.
is huge. 3, a coping mechanism. I love, again, I shared before, tapping
Yeah.
affirmations
Mm-hmm.
for balance and peace, meditation. And people say meditation is hard. Meditation is not about quieting the mind. It's about being in the moment, in the now, slowing your breathing down, paying attention to what's going on in your body. And then you'll learn how
Mm-hmm.
to do it a little bit longer. Um, Healthy practices. Go work out. It doesn't mean that you have to be a body boy and all this other stuff, have the abs and all that. Go to the gym, get your endorphins up, um, work on your eating habits. Not to mention, find your local LGBT center and get into some local groups where you can create friendships that are not based on just promiscuity
Sex.
or
Yeah.
drugs. you know
Right.
Go to your local LGBT center, see what resources that they have. There are LGBT centers that give you 16 visits with a therapist. Seek a therapist, seek a life coach. It's not as expensive
Mm-hmm.
as you think it is. People will take the time to create a payment scale for you so that they can work with you. Just don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Those would be my first go-tos. Is really the first go-to personally would be get you a therapist when you come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go to your LGBT center. There's people there who will mentor you. Reach out to people like us who are on these podcasts, who have the information, who have the understanding and the knowledge. Not to mention, choose mentors that have the bandwidth and capacity to be there for you. Sometimes we
Yeah.
choose people who we think are good, are nice people, but you never know
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in their life. And they're just overextending themselves and being a people pleaser and not being able to truly give you the gift and the blessing that you really need. So choose wisely.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be some of my ideas for resources and coping.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, we've talked about on this podcast several times about friendships and relationships and things like that, and how it's important to have those platonic connections, and everything doesn't have to be because this person is attractive. They can
Yeah.
still be a resource to you. And even if they are attractive, you don't have to um, react to it or engage with that just because that person is an attractive person. There's people that can provide you friendship, mentorship, and platonic connections. They can be attractive, they can be unattractive. They shouldn't be dismissed just because of how they look. Um, and I think it's
Yeah.
important that people keep that grounding and keep that in mind when they go out to research and try to connect with these individuals and resources.
Not to mention, to piggyback off what you're saying, don't get pigeonholed into, yes, look for people who do look like you that have the bandwidth and capacity and information to be able to share with you, but don't be afraid to talk to somebody who doesn't look like you. They may still have the information and experiences and knowledge to be able to pass that on to you so that you can get your foot in the door and to get the wheel started. Sometimes it's just about getting started, and a lot of us, you know, have dealt with, the community. When I came into the community, um, and was living in New York, I was a part of Out Magazine Top 100. I thought this was so amazing and I was so excited. Like, wow, I'm one of the top 100 in the world, most influential, shaping our community. Like little old me from Indiana. And then I get to the photo shoot and I see Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen and, this person and that person, and they're in tuxedos and they're taking their pictures. They came out to me with a hanger with some underwear on. And I know they thought that this concept of me holding a globe with the world, I got the world in my hand and me in these old school wrestler underwear, I felt sexualized. I felt
Yeah.
like I really didn't make it. Like, in order for me as a black man to be palatable to you, you have to sexualize me so that you can actually hear what I'm saying. Because you don't think I'm intelligent enough without being sexy in order for you to pay attention to me. It hurt.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it hurt.
It is. Yeah.
But I flipped it on them. I flipped it. I started to speak about this and taking the power back. It took a while. It took a while, but it's that's where I learned the difference between resources for the white community and what they can do, and then us. And I hate feeling like
Hmm.
that there's a them and there's an us.
And there's an
But
us.
it's
Yeah.
true, and we have to learn how to navigate in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned something else just then about, not being pigeonholed because we do have to remember, you mentioned that you're from Indiana. I'm from Mississippi, small town, and there's people that could be listening to this podcast all over the globe. So, yeah, even if you're from a small place with low population, try to still reach out for some resources in the next biggest town in your state or community. And if there aren't any, you know, this is the internet we're on. So yeah, you can reach out to the internet and find someone regional that should be able to assist you as well. Because we've got virtual everything these days. You can
Absolutely.
get virtual doctor visits. There's virtual mental health resources. So we can use the internet for more than just looking up recipes and finding out when the next circuit party is.
And doom scrolling.
And watching
You know,
cat
it's
videos.
crazy.
Right.
It's really important that young people today are very vocal about what they don't like, but they're not vocal about what they do like and what they don't want to see and what they don't want to be. And don't do this to me and tell me and call me by my pronouns. I would say to a young person, if you've been through some things, find power in your name. You won't worry too much about your pronouns once you find power in your name. I used to hate
Mhm.
my name because when I would hear my name, I would hear my mom screaming at me. Like you ain't gonna do this, you ain't gonna be that. Like I would hear those words about what I wasn't supposed to be. So I hated my name. And then once I got into the community and I started saying my name with strength and with courage, because it took a lot of courage for me to say, you know, in a magazine, hey, I'm openly gay and I'm a professional basketball player and I am a black man. And I had no support. There was no support. There was nobody else having this conversation. And so once I started saying, I am DeMarco Majors, that name holds weight. And I love my name. I love being me. And once you start love being you, yes, people can call you by your pronouns, but you will want them to call you by your name because that power gives you this energy, this light. And once you start doing that, you can, and not to mention using the internet you start using the internet to your advantage. It's not always just about great quotes and all these other things. Like he said before, you can find resources. I know that here in LA, you reach out to the LGBT center, give them your information, you can get 16 visits to a therapist. You can get housing if you're a youth from the age of 18 to 24. They will find housing for you. If you need to get out of your city, they will help you do those things. So there are so many things that are available to us that weren't available to us when, I don't know how old you guys are, but when I was younger, there a lot of this stuff did not exist. But today, because a lot of us have fought for it, it's out there for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unheard of. Because
Mhm.
I think, when I'm not ashamed of my age, I'm 48, about to turn 49, and to think it was basically, some people are scared to come out because you turn out or you tell your people that you're gay, your family, you're out the house. And,
Yeah,
what are you going to do? You're going to be sleeping on a bench like the character on, Pose. And if you're not in an area where there's resources for that, you're just kind of like stuck, or you don't have anyone that'll take you in or not take you in and take advantage of you.
right.
So that's great that there's opportunity, for those the new generation coming up. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A
It's
lot more
incredible.
opportunities. Yeah,
It's
definitely.
incredible to see what it's unfortunate that Ryan White had to go through what he went through, but his life has been lived on a legacy that we now have the Ryan White Foundation. We have the Ryan White insurance programs where you can get PrEP and you can get medication for your HIV. You can get mental health medication. I would say to a lot of our youth out there, if you find yourself struggling with depression, reach out to these organizations, reach out to GLAD, reach out to these organizations, reach out to an LGBT center in a town that's bigger than you and tell them what you're going through, and they will rush resources to you. They will find a way. Never feel like it's the end because you're probably at the beginning. And it's
Right.
when I say it's going to get better, I'm not saying it's immediate. You will have to do the work. You will go from 1 to 10. However, if you feel yourself fall back to one, you will never fall back to one unless when you learn the lessons, you will go from 11 to 20. You will never go back to one. So always take your lessons and figure out a way to say, I know I'm in this place now, but I know something better for me out there. Desire will
Mhm.
create that urgency within you.
Absolutely.
All right.
The doors of the church are open. Is there one? Because that definitely was a
Pass the
word.
collection
That was
plate.
definitely a word. Pass the collection. Please pass the
Definitely.
collection plate. Yes. And I'll be one of the people at the front that goes, we need 20 more dollars. We need 20 more dollars. And we get, 3 or 4 more people to give me 20 more dollars. Yeah. Um,
For the
is
building
there
fund.
anything? Yeah, for the building fund. Yeah. Yeah. We
The
hadn't put a door
building
or a
fund.
doorknob on anything, but we got a building fund. Um, is there anything that is upcoming for life coach DeMarco Majors that we should know about?
um, I have decided to open my practice up. I keep a boutique practice, but I've decided to open my
Mhm.
practice up to 15 new people, um,
Okay.
which is, again, a little intimidating, but you got to learn how to
You
be
got it.
organized. So that's what's coming up for me is, you know, allowing myself to open the door to what's blessed me to help other people heal from their
Mhm.
traumas and learn how to create goals and action items and strategy, learn how to build strategy because a lot of us think that we have an idea. A lot of us think that we have a goal because we have an idea. It's just a glorified idea until you create a plan, take and then you create a strategy to your plan, create action items to your strategy, then you create deadlines to your action items, and then multiply that. Once you hit that goal, that doesn't mean the goal is finished, and you have to learn how to master it. So you got to redo the steps. So I'm opening the doors to that. Um, Funny that you say that. I'm just going to put this out in the atmosphere. I met with a couple people on Friday. I was actually there for a friend. We had drinks, here in LA, and they want to push me to. They want to use their resources of friendships. They want me to have an agent to put me in film and television again. So I'm going to
Oh,
allow
nice,
myself
nice.
to uh,
All right.
do that again. So that means I've got to put down, my fried food and get back in the gym and have some fun and play. But you know,
Hmm.
that's what's on the horizon is just allowing myself to be free and to open up the doors to new people and to new spaces and um, continue on letting go of things that have hindered me in the past and things that I've done well at. Just let that go and be more of me. So I'm looking forward to the new projects that I can't speak on them that are,
Right, right.
in my inbox. Um, but that's what's on the horizon for me is that.
Okay, okay.
It's
That's
great.
what's up. That's what's
Opportunity.
up. Yeah. And you have support here at Just Draws. And if
Indeed.
anything we can do to help promote, we will do what we can. We're the little podcast that could right now, but I know that we're going to definitely step into greater things, and we'll be here to support, any way we can.
Well, that was my question to you. How can I support you? How can I support
Well,
Just Draws?
one of the things is definitely being here, tonight. That was definitely something that is going to, I think, help us.
Oh
And
yeah.
a lot of the conversations that we had tonight and a lot of the knowledge that was kind of dropped within our community tonight, I think is going to help some people, just making sure that we're reaching as many people as we can. That's really the thing here. We have a good product here, and we talk about a lot of good things, and so we want people to really kind of come into our space, know who we are, and be able to kind of share with us who they are, so that we actually build community versus we're just here to look at these two guys on camera talk about their own personal shit. It's like, nah, we want you to kind of talk about your personal shit so that we can all talk about personal shit and be that together. So that's really it. Just helping us kind of get the word out, and helping us in terms of not necessarily opening doors or spaces for us, because I think that will come with time. But I
Yeah,
think
it does.
just yeah, just being able to reach a different subset of people, that's the only thing we're looking for. We're on the road to 100 subscribers. We've only been doing this for a year, but we are definitely, it's been fulfilling. It's been fulfilling for us. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that
Yeah.
keeps us going, is the fact that it's cathartic, and that it's helping us build who we are going to be in the next phases of our lives.
Oh,
Indeed.
awesome.
Yeah. You coming on to the show, I think has just been a great. So I'm really excited once
Hmm.
this episode comes out and people can actually have the opportunity to watch this
Right,
and
right.
get something out of it. And I think you've given us a lot of good nuggets. Like we said at the start of the show, um, there was a lot to take back home and listen to
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
this recording. Definitely
Awesome.
some good stuff here, and I hope our target audience receives that because I've received it in this recording. So
Hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I
Thank you.
hope the people that
I
aren't our
appreciate it.
target audience will become our target audience as well.
right.
Okay. So,
I always say, since I've been in doing this, the camera catches the energy that it's supposed to capture, and it will reach out and get the people who need it most in the moment.
mhm.
and who are on that path. And this will reach a lot of people.
We hope so. And we thank you so much for being here, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend a little bit of time with us and to spend a little time with our viewers and our listeners. So with that, I think that I'm done. Jeff, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add to that.
I don't. I think you've said everything that needed to be said. I'll just
welcome.
repeat thanks to DeMarco for hopping on and working with us on our recording schedule. So thanks for being available and open for working with us this evening. I appreciate it a lot.
No problem.
Absolutely, me too. And happy homecoming to the Aggies of North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be Valentine's Day or Christmas or some shit like that. But happy homecoming. I'm wearing my A&T hoodie today, so I want to shout that out as well.
Nice.
All right. So with that, I'm going to close it out. So thanks everyone for listening and watching this episode. Thanks to DeMarco for being a guest with us. I'm Jeff again.
And I'm Darius, aka DMC. We'll catch y'all next time.
Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now be sure to like, share, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify at Just Drawz. That's JustDrawz. Until next time,